James the Red Engine by the Reverend W. Awdry, with illustrations by C. Reginald Dalby. Dear friends of Edward, Gordon, Henry, and Thomas, thank you for your kind letters. Here is the new book for which you asked. James, who crashed into the story of Thomas the Tank Engine, settles down and becomes a useful engine. We are nationalized now, but the same engines still work the region. I am glad, too, to tell you that the fat director, who understands our friend's ways, is still in charge, but is now the fat controller. I hope you will enjoy this book, too. Signed, the author. James and the Top Hat. James was a new engine who lived at a station on the other end of the line. He had 2 small wheels in front and 6 driving wheels behind. They weren't as big as Gordon's, and they weren't as small as Thomas's. "You're a special mixed traffic engine," the fat controller told him. "You'll be able to pull coaches or trucks quite easily." But trucks are not easy things to manage, and on his first day they had pushed him down a hill into a field. He had been ill after the accident, but now he had new brakes and a shining coat of red paint. "The red paint will cheer you up after your accident," said the fat controller kindly. "You are to pull coaches today, and Edward shall help you." They went together to find the coaches. "Be careful with the coaches, James," said Edward. "They don't like being bumped. Trucks are silly and noisy. They need to be bumped and taught to behave, but coaches get cross and will pay you out." They took the coaches to the platform and were both coupled on in front. The fat controller, the station master, and some little boys all came to admire James's shining rods and red paint. James was pleased. "I am a really splendid engine," he thought, and suddenly let off steam. Whoosh! The fat controller, the station master, and the guard all jumped, and a shower of water fell on the fat controller's nice new top hat. Just then the whistle blew, and James thought they had better go. So they went. Go on, he puffed to Edward. Don't push, puffed Edward, for he did not like starting quickly. Don't go so fast, grumbled the coaches. But James did not listen. He wanted to run away before the fat controller could call him back. He didn't even want to stop at the first station. Edward tried hard to stop, but the 2 coaches in front were beyond the platform before they had stopped, and they had to go back and let the passengers get out. Lots of people came to look at James, and as no one seemed to know about the fat controller's top hat, James felt happier. Presently they came to the junction where Thomas was waiting with his 2 coaches. "Hello, James," said Thomas kindly. "Feeling better? That's right. Ah, that's my guard's whistle. I must go. Sorry I can't stop. I don't know what the fat controller would do without me to run this branch line." And he puffed off importantly with his 2 coaches into a tunnel. Leaving the junction, they passed the field where James had had his accident. The fence was mended and the cows were back again. James whistled, but they paid no attention. They clattered through Edward's station yard and started to climb the hill beyond. "It's ever so steep, puffed James. I've done it before, puffed Edward. "It's steep, but we'll do it, the 2 engines puffed together as they pulled the train up the long hill. They both rested at the next station. Edward told James how Gordon had stuck on the hill, and he had had to push him up. James laughed so much that he got the hiccups, and surprised an old lady in a black bonnet. She dropped all her parcels, and 3 porters, the station master and the guard, had to run after her picking them up. James was quiet in the shed that night. He had enjoyed his day, but he was a little afraid of what the fat controller would say about the top hat. James and the Bootlace. Next morning, the fat controller spoke severely to James. "If you can't behave, I shall take away your red coat and have you painted blue." James did not like that at all, and he was very rough with the coaches as he brought them to the platform. Come along, he called rudely. All in good time, the coaches grumbled. "Don't talk, come on," answered James, and with the coaches squealing and grumbling after him, he snorted into the station. James was cross that morning. The fat controller had spoken to him, the coaches had dawdled, and worst of all, he had had to fetch his own coaches. Gordon never does, thought James, and he is only painted blue. A splendid red engine like me should never have to fetch his own coaches. And he puffed and snorted around to the front of the train and backed onto it with a rude bump. "Oh," groaned the coaches, "that was too bad." To make James even more cross, he then had to take the coaches to a different platform, where no one came near him as he stood there. The fat controller was in his office, the station master was at the other end of the train with the guard, and even the little boys stood a long way off. James felt lonely. "I'll show them," he said to himself. "They think Gordon is the only engine who can pull coaches." And as soon as the guard's whistle blew, he started off with a tremendous jerk. "Come on, come on, come on," he puffed, and the coaches, squeaking and groaning in protest, clattered over the points onto the open line. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," puffed James. "You're going too fast! You're going too fast!" said the coaches, and indeed they were going so fast that they swayed from side to side. James laughed and tried to go faster, but the coaches wouldn't let him. "We're going to stop! We're going to stop! We're going to stop!" they said. And James found himself going slower and slower. "What's the matter?" James asked his driver. "The brakes are hard on. Leak in the pipe, most likely. You've banged the coaches enough to make a leak in anything." The guard and the driver got down and looked at the brake pipes all along the train. At last they found a hole where rough treatment had made a joint work loose. "How shall we mend it?" said the guard. James's driver thought for a moment. "We'll do it with newspapers and a leather bootlace." "Well, where is the bootlace coming from?" asked the guard. "We haven't one." "Ask the passengers," said the driver. So the guard made everyone get out. "Has anybody got a leather bootlace?" he asked. They all said no, except one man in a bowler hat whose name was Jeremiah Jobling, who tried to hide his feet. "You have a leather bootlace there, I see, sir," said the guard. "Please give it to me."
"I won't,"
said Jeremiah Jobling. "Then," said the guard sternly, "I'm afraid this train will just stop where it is." Then the passengers all told the guard, the driver, and the fireman what a bad railway it was. But the guard climbed into his van, and the driver and fireman made James let off steam. So they all told Jeremiah Jobling he was a bad man instead. At last he gave them his laces. The driver tied a pad of newspapers tightly round the hole, and James was able to pull the train. But he was a sadder and wiser James, and took care never to bump coaches again.